Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Mysterious Forces Live. I'm so glad you could join me. It's Friday, September 14th, 2018. I appreciate you being here. I'm glad you're tuning in. Tonight, returning is William Pullin. He's a ufologist that hails out of San Antonio, Texas. And he has a lot more to talk about in terms of new projects and what he's up to. And he was on the first show, and we were still having our technical difficulties. And tonight we're starting on time. We don't have any of those glitches. And so this should be a much better time in terms of just being relaxed with William. And I do want to say that we have some great guests lined up for the rest of the weekend as well. Tomorrow night, I have Dave Partridge, and he is the editor of Shadows of Your Mind magazine, and that comes out of the UK. And he's going to be the guest tomorrow, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And what's really special is Sunday is my birthday, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do for a show because I had made some plans to go out of town. So I have meshed these things together, and I'm going to be in Jerome, Arizona, and I'm going to be staying in the Connor Hotel, which is reportedly haunted. And we were able to secure the quote unquote most haunted room they have, which purports to have multiple appearances of a lady in red. And I'm going to just use my phone and live stream at the same time for the show. And I'm going to go through the hallways, and maybe management will give me some access to other parts of the building. And I'm going to ghost hunt live on the air with you. And I'll just do it off the cuff, and we'll have a good time doing that. So look forward to that Sunday. And tomorrow night is Dave Partridge. Also, really quickly, don't forget that I'm going to be at Disclosure Con in Pine Top, Arizona on October 5th and 6th. And that's where sci-fi and sci-reality collide under one roof. It's going to be a good time. There'll be photo opportunities there at my table for free. Please stop by and see me. Get a sticker. William, welcome to the show. So glad to have you back.
Thanks again for having me. It's a privilege. How are you?
I'm doing great. I bounced back this week. I had some complications earlier in the week. I had a lot of people on Facebook with me. Well, I did a little stint in the hospital last weekend, and but I'm much better, and everything is cool. So I want to thank everyone for the well wishes. I want to talk a little bit tonight, William. I follow your Facebook page, and we're Facebook friends, and there's been a little bit of drama there in San Antonio in accordance with the MUFON group that you were involved with. And can you do a little rundown on what happened over this past week with them?
Well, I've been running my own group, my online group, and hosting local meetings here in San Antonio. And then I hadn't gone to the local MUFON chapter meetings for several months. And I got an email from a friend who goes to those meetings and said, you should come back to the meetings. We miss you coming out here. So I did. And lo and behold, I was offered and elected to the position of vice president in the MUFON group, even though I'm not a MUFON member, which that whole situation landed in my lap. I accepted it and started working hard to work alongside the MUFON group, myself and a newly elected secretary. And that worked well for 6 weeks. And then evidently the chapter head was given an email. There was some sort of change in the state handbook that state directors have to follow, which dictated that a person holding an executive position with a MUFON chapter has to be a MUFON member. So we were unceremoniously terminated, and that was the end of it. So,
wow,
pretty short-lived.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I think this is not an episode where we're going to bash MUFON. MUFON has done some good work over the years, and I think to a certain extent, they've been good ambassadors. And I also think that MUFON has had some missteps in the last couple of years, and I think they're kind of organizationally challenged right now. And So this led to you starting your own UFO and cryptid investigation group. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, and actually, I'll go back a step. Those previous statements you made about MUFON, I agree wholeheartedly with all those statements. It's all about the smaller chapters. They do great work. But you're right, there's been a few missteps. But so the situation transpired, and around the same time that was happening, there were four other gentlemen that are local members of my U for Real group. And they had expressed an interest in organizing their own organization, our own investigative unit. So when the MUFON thing didn't pan out, I thought, well, that's one door closing and another door opening. So we organized our own group, and we have a new page on Facebook. We're organizing our equipment here in San Antonio. It's called UFO Cryptid Investigations, and so far it's been getting a lot of buzz and working well. So,
How many people are a part of that organization?
I have five investigators counting me. I'm the UFO guy. The other four are more diverse in their paranormal interests. And likes, we've almost got 200 likes already, and the page is already, it's only been in existence about 3 weeks. So it's really expanding pretty quickly. So
That's cool. And you guys are going to be using electronic investigative gear. I know that's not always appropriate for UFO investigations, but for more of the paranormal stuff, people, use the FLIR cameras and other equipment to investigate. Is there equipment like that involved with this?
there will be. Yeah, we're just in the process of acquiring all the equipment we need, whether it's a cryptid investigation or UFO. Um, so yeah, we're really enamored and really driving home a scientific method of investigations, taking things step by step, brick by brick, doing things properly from the start to the finish. Wherever the evidence leads us, that's the conclusion we have, if there's enough evidence to draw a conclusion. But right now, we're really just organizing ourselves, and we're really in the process of getting the gear we need for investigations. And we haven't gotten any individuals to call with a sighting yet, but I'm sure that'll transpire in the future, and then we'll go from there. So,
Are you going to prepare analysis for consumption by the public, or are you going to just provide analysis to whoever may be reporting phenomena?
a little both. Obviously, we'll keep everything discreet and personal, as far as personal information, as far as the individual reporting the sighting. We'll always follow through with them. So whatever conclusion we reach with our investigation, we'll inform them as to what conclusions we drew, and then that report will be filed away, probably maybe actually in my office here, where we have access to it, and the individual that filed the report will have access to it. Now, above and beyond that, the as we do more and more investigations, the data we can use as a general base to establish patterns, things of that nature, without using any specific information about the person who reported the sighting. So a little of both, yeah.
Cool. Do you think you're going to be tracking statistics so that as time goes on, you have a more of a comprehensive database of just pure statistics, not necessarily just individual rundowns of cases, but just numbers?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm a big numbers evidence guy. You know that, and it's kind of the approach that Nightcap and APRO and MUFON at times has had, where they're gathering information, establishing patterns, running statistics. And because especially with UFOs, UFO sighting is not something that can be predicted. So gathering of information and establishment of statistics is kind of all you have. You can't sit and wait for a UFO to fly overhead. You might be there for years. So all you can do is gather numbers and evidence and go from there. So yeah, it's certainly not it's not something that can be predicted. So it's kind of very fly by night occurrence that makes it very difficult. So.
Yeah, I agree. And shifting gears a little bit here, I've been paying close attention to this Sunspot, New Mexico, the shutting down of the observatory and the other 7 cameras that were linked in with these other observatories. Have you been following that story?
Kind of. I've been so busy writing lectures for a conference I'm going to appear at here in San Antonio in a couple of weeks. I've kind of been keeping up with it just in passing. I read a few reports that seemed really speculative. The installation was closed. There was an evacuation, and immediately there were some individuals that ran with it and said, "There's some UFO component. There's some conspiracy to it." Uh, if there's evidence of that, that's yet to really come to light. But it is certainly an interesting occurrence as to what really transpired. I mean, I'm a cautious guy, so I'll wait and see what comes of it as time goes on. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, me too. I don't want to kind of fan the flames of hyperbole before something really, comes to light in that. I do
Yeah.
think it's kind of weird. I do think that there's some unusual elements to the story. Just the fact that they shut it down and there's no real explanation to the local authorities, and they shut down the nearby post office and moved the postal workers to another facility temporarily. I think that's kind of odd. And I do know that some photographs popped up online, apparently of something, transiting in the sun. But some of the analysis I've heard is that that's just a photograph of the moon transiting in between the Earth and the sun. And that's what the object is. There's been no real hard evidence, just a lot of speculation. But the ufology community, everyone's ears kind of perked up, and I think they're really waiting to see what happens with this, if anything.
Yeah, I think waiting is a smart thing to do. Yeah, and I agree with you. There's certainly some odd and interesting things that have happened in the town, which have yet to be explained. And like you said, the local authorities were unaware of, and they're still unaware of the reasons why these actions were taken. And yeah, the UFO community has their ears have perked up, but there's been a lot of random speculation. And it seems to be the way nowadays, as opposed to 10, 20 years ago. A story comes out and speculation immediately starts occurring, as opposed to uh, a gathering of evidence, or at least non-speculation, at least waiting for the story to develop and see what transpires, and then drawing some conclusions, as opposed to just immediately jumping the gun and speculating. So it really doesn't get us anywhere. So
No, it doesn't. I think that's also a benefit of having the internet, even though there's a lot of crap that winds up online, and you kind of have to
just a
sort
little.
through. You have to put on your hip waders and get through that. I think that the internet, in a lot of ways, for the serious minded people, it keeps people more honest and really kind of shuts down the hype, and gets people to, because there's so many eyes on a case, or there's so many eyes on an individual and what they say online. It just keeps people honest, and kind of socially keeps them within bounds on that kind of a thing. Do you have any new
Yeah.
UFO cases in the Texas area, or anything that you've heard of lately? Anything going on down there?
I was on a program last night, and one of the hosts mentioned a sighting which I'd heard about in passing, I think 2 days ago, and it's in the Del Rio area. Evidently, an individual took a photograph, and there was a pretty substantial weather system that went through the Del Rio area, and a lot of lightning, a lot of activity, a lot of electrical releases in the atmosphere. And this individual took a picture of a light source, and was the picture was claimed to show three distinct points of light in a row, which is an unnatural occurrence on first examination. But I haven't seen the photograph though, so my skeptical mind immediately thinks it's most likely probably either the light plane on the lens of the camera, or a weather phenomenon that was captured in just the right angle, so it looked artificial, perhaps. But beyond that, I haven't. Again, it's been a lot of speculation. I haven't seen any more further reports, and because the photograph was just recently taken, I imagine there hasn't been any kind of investigation to find out what was captured on film. So, still being cautious. But that's the most recent one in the Texas San Antonio area that I've heard about as of late. So,
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stories that relate UFO activity with thunderstorms and lightning discharges in particular.
yeah.
Have you drawn any correlations with that phenomena yourself? How much credence do you give to that?
Well, it goes to the idea that a lot of times when there's a lot of weather phenomena going up in the sky, there's a lot of lights going on, there's a lot of activity. A lot of that can be misinterpreted. Uh, by nature, individuals, humans are not the greatest observers. You can have a car crash occur downtown here in San Antonio. The police can arrive 5 minutes later. They can ask 10 individuals what the color of or the description of the driver that caused the accident. You'll get 10 different descriptions. So people inherently are not great observers. So when you have a random occurrence like lightning strikes, ball lightning, things happening in the air, it's very easy for individuals to misinterpret. That doesn't mean their testimony is invalid. They certainly may have observed something, but that doesn't get you to the extraterrestrial. That doesn't get you to unexplained. That's simply something that is unexplained as of now. And with a proper investigation, usually an explanation can be found. So, and going back to the scenario of the internet, on my group, I had an individual on my U for Real group that was posting random links from the internet on my group. I had to actually remove them from the group because I'm always encouraging members to actually write their comments out, to actually use their minds and think and write out their thoughts as opposed to just randomly posting a link, which requires no thought. That's easy. I want to challenge my members. So the internet certainly it's a double-edged sword. There's a lot of great information out there, but at the same time, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of false information out there too. So you have to be really careful when you deal directly with internet. It's certainly for today's society, it's an instant gratification thing. You can look up something on Google, you find the answer. People don't really look into the information that's gathered. That can be an issue, but it is what it is. So
No, that's true. You're so right on that point. And in dealing with other areas of ufology, I know that we've talked about some different cases the last time you were on. And have you had much interaction with experiencers, people who make claims of abduction or other levels of contact with these entities or with this phenomenon?
yes, I have a couple of personal interactions with some individuals here in San Antonio, and I've listened to their testimony. Um, at least in my local discussions, I'm a big advocate of elimination of the ridicule factor. That's a very harsh thing to deal with. If you've experienced something, you'd like to have a platform where you can express yourself without fear of being laughed at. And my local discussers are all about that. And so I had two individuals come to me that actually attended the MUFON meetings also. But the MUFON meetings are up to 30, 40 individuals. About half that number attend my discussions. So they clearly were more comfortable with me. They were more comfortable with a smaller number of individuals at a meeting. And they both expressed their experiences to me in a very comfortable way. And I take that at face value. I make no judgments about what they actually experienced. So I've had some contact with them and email contact with some other individuals around the country that have expressed they wanted to express their experiences or reached out to me and asked me, is there a platform they can express themselves to? And I've forwarded their information, their contact to individuals that MUFON that work with this, other independent researchers that work with them, because I'm more the historical guy, and there are people that are far more qualified to deal with this kind of trauma than I would be. So I tend to forward them in that direction. So
That's good. That's really responsible of you. Very admirable. And in terms of just kind of opining on that topic, I want to get into a little bit of, and this is just pure opinion. We're not talking about facts per se, but, and I've wondered this about myself, and I ask myself this question: what criteria do I use that informs me as to whether I'm going to believe a witness testimony or believe an experiencer? And what types of information do I just automatically dismiss as more or less on the hoax side, or at least incredible? And I mean that word literally in its original sense, incredible in the sense that it
yeah.
strains credulity. What criteria do you yourself use in trying to determine whether you think someone's telling the truth or whether they're just seeking attention on some level?
Uh, there's a few red flags for me, but the biggest red flag for me is when I hear someone say, I know. Um,
Yes.
None of us know the answers to the UFO phenomenon. As a species, we're really not intelligent enough even to know the questions to ask. So when I hear an individual say, I know this happened to me, I know the reason why, I know what happened, my first thought is, well, then why do you even need an investigation? If you already know the answers, an investigation would be a waste of time. So to me, that's a kind of a red flag. But when I don't hear that, I take their testimony at face value. They deserve respect. They deserve a cordial approach to them. So I listen to them with an open mind, and if they want me to write the information down and go from there, I give them total respect and go from there. And then I let the investigation bear fruit. If the process of the investigation, their testimony still remains, the case still remains unexplained, that holds up. If something is a red flag and it doesn't hold up, well, you go with that too. I tend to vet the information. I tend to vet or background check the individual, background check their were they at that location? Do they hold a certain rank? Are they who they say they are? Are there any other issues in their personal life that may or may not put up a red flag as to their reliability? Things of that nature. It's kind of like what an attorney will do in a courtroom. An individual is giving testimony, but if there's a severe red flag in their background, that casts their testimony in a different light. It's kind of the same thing when you have somebody inexperienced or giving you testimony. If their background checks out and that testimony holds up after investigations, it's still taken as valid. That doesn't get you anywhere as far as a concrete explanation, but at least that individual is simply telling you what they experienced. They're unable to tell you why or the actual details, but they clearly feel like they experienced something, and to them it's a real occurrence, and that's what you kind of go by. But it's a slippery slope. It's very difficult. It's extremely difficult at times to tell whether someone is actually basically telling you the truth or not. That can be very difficult. So.
Yeah. How much weight, hypothetically speaking, how much, because I don't think
Mm.
you've actually been in this situation, how much weight would you place on hypnotic regression as an aid in verifying these types of experiences?
I'm not the biggest fan of hypnosis. I've I've seen multiple interviews. I've heard firsthand presentations by medical professionals, and I have yet to hear one say that hypnosis is a cut and dry way to gain information about someone's experiences that they've either regressed or they've eliminated or they blocked from their memory directly. And hypnosis again is a slippery slope because it's extremely hard to ask questions of a person that's under hypnosis without leading them. That's very difficult to do because one, the person who's investigating the case is having to be objective and not have any kind of preconceived notion. That's very difficult to do, but it can be done. But to ask questions about somebody or to somebody that's under hypnosis and not lead them in any direction, that's very difficult too. So I'm not the biggest fan of hypnosis per se. But again, I'm just a historian. I'm not a medical professional. So a medical professional that practices hypnosis would be far more qualified than I would to comment on the legitimacy of that. But just my opinion. So there you have it.
No, no,
Yeah.
yeah. The path you've chosen on that is so wise because I like it that you just kind of stick within your own wheelhouse and you don't try to push beyond that. And I think some people make a mistake with that. They're kind of all over the place and what they believe or what they think they believe. And you have, and I don't mean this in a negative way whatsoever. You have kind of a narrow focus, and I think that's good. That helps you stick with the facts and the evidence, which I'm a big fan of that myself. I will say this. Many years ago, and I'm talking decades, I was hypnotically regressed for a past life regression by a trained hypnotist. And it was a fascinating experience. This person led me through steps of back to my birth. And they, even though they were asking leading questions in terms of taking me back in this regression, I had experiences pop up spontaneously in my mind of they took me back to the moment of my birth, and they were like, what do you sense? What do you see? And I was like, I'm cold and I'm dizzy. And I wouldn't have necessarily thought, cold and dizzy would be the first things out of your mouth. But if you think about it, you've been in a very warm environment this whole incubation time, this gestation. Yeah. And then suddenly, you're out of the womb and it's the temperature change. And I imagine the fluid in your ears would shift. And so cold and dizzy would kind of make sense. And then they took me back beyond that birth experience. And I just saw complete blackness. It was as if my mind existed, but what I saw before me was like just this black space of indeterminate depth. And they took me into some past lives. They asked me about it, and they didn't give me any leading questions in terms of suggesting what I might see or might not see. But instantly, information came to me. I saw pictures, and it was like reading text from a book. It was like I had opened a book and was reading a story to someone, and it was already right there, just waiting for me to read it. And I also want to say that just because I had that experience with past life regression doesn't mean that it's true. Just because I experienced that psychological phenomena doesn't mean that it's accurate. And I want to be very clear about that, because our minds are very powerful, and our psychological makeup is very complex, and there can be no accounting for what we may experience psychologically or psychically or otherwise. But it did help make me aware that there was some reservoir of information, whether it's true or false, or whether my mind was generating it, that was available immediately right there, just waiting to be tapped into. And I think it's a fascinating subject. I think it needs to be explored even further.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. And going back to your comment about being very specific about my endeavors. Yeah. The UFO field is so vast and so diverse. There's so many aspects to it. I cannot imagine being extremely knowledgeable about every aspect of the phenomenon. That'd be very difficult. You have cattle mutilations, abductions, crash retrievals, radar visuals, all these different aspects. And I'm really a nuts and bolts guy, so I specialize in one and try not to make uninformed statements about something. So when I've done historical reviews or done an investigation and I need someone's point of view, if a military individual or a medical professional, I will seek them out instead of applying my own opinion, which is one, uneducated, and two, uninformed. I will seek out an individual whose point of view is much more informed than mine would be, and gain the knowledge from their point of view, which is a much better thing than just speculating. And research is fine, but they have a firsthand experience with whatever that angle is. So, yeah, I try to keep pretty narrow my approach and then reach out to individuals that have better knowledge than I do. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, and so very well said. William, thank you so much for being on the show. We burned up a half hour so quickly. You can find William's group, UFO Cryptid Investigations, on Facebook, and also UFO Real, which is UFO_real. You can look it up. There's a lot of good people in the group. And if you like what William has to say here on the show, you'll really like what he puts up on his page. William, you're welcome back anytime. Don't forget,
I had your service.
Thank you. I'm going to be at Disclosure Con October 5th and 6th in Pine Top, Arizona. Please get your tickets. come to Disclosure Con. Come to my table. There'll be photo ops. I'm going to have a Roswell Rhodes Jackson guitar there that you can have your picture taken with. I'm going to have some stickers, maybe some other swag. We'll find out. Cool. It's going to be a good time. It's where sci-fi and sci-reality collide under one roof. Thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow night, Dave Partridge from Shadows of Your Mind magazine. And Sunday, I'm going to be at the Connors Hotel in Jerome, Arizona, which is purportedly haunted. And I'm going to be live streaming with a live ghost hunt from the hotel. Thank you so much. Be safe, everyone. And thanks for tuning in. Thank you.